Thank you, Isidora, for the nice introduction. I personally believe that the best way to finish something is actually to start something new. So my general idea is to talk about future cities or heritage in some future cities. And before we start to talk about it, we'll show you one video. It is actually a vision of future cities through an eye of a citizen. So, please, can we play the video? Video is kind of disturbing for most architects. Please turn off the lights.
Fantastic. Great. Nice. Great.
Más tarde. Apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Yo estudié para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una monje afortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No, eso no es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No. Puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
Estoy presente ahora. Me amo. Estoy libre de mi ira. Estoy libre de mi tristeza. El amor es mi esperanza.
Habla español, niña, que vaya. Adiós. Hola, me llamo María.
Bueno. Hola otra vez. Ay, no, cállate. ¿Qué está pasando?
Buen día, Emilio. ¿Qué puedo hacer por usted?
¿Qué está pasando? Mis puntos están bien.
No se preocupe. Sus puntos están seguros conmigo. ¿Le puedo ayudar en algo más, Emilio?
Yo no soy Emilio. Yo soy Juliana Restrepo.
Por favor, espere.
Hola, Juliana Restrepo. Me alegra verte. ¿Qué puedo hacer por ti?
Mis puntos están bien. ¿Qué está pasando?
Tranquila, todo está bien. Parece que alguien está intentando vulnerar su cuenta. Por favor, espere mientras reinicio su dispositivo. Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte. Hoy te ves hermosa. ¿Estás estrenando zapatos?
Ya lo arreglaron. Tengo que seguir trabajando.
Estoy trabajando en eso, pero necesito verificar tu información biométrica. Por favor, sigue la línea azul hasta el centro de servicio más cercano para confirmar tu identidad.
Sí, pero mis puntos están bien.
Todo está bien. Chao.
¿Qué? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué? ¿Qué está pasando? No, mis puntos, mis puntos. ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué es eso?
Okay, thank you, video. You can bring me back the presentation. So actually I have just one question for all of you is what do you think what will be the future city heritage? This video can be an inspiration or you can learn from the video if you don't feel inspired by it. Who wants to start?
I'll say something.
Okay. You need a microphone.
She was not going to say anything. I don't have an answer to the question. I think the video raised more questions for me than answered them. I mean, if we're talking about immersive environments as the future of architecture, we're talking about something that's digital. And everything we've discussed this weekend has been about heritage in a very physical sense and space. And so if we talk about, if the supposition is that the future city is embedded with, is an immersive environment, how do we process that as heritage? Or how do we even begin to archive it? Or what is the heritage? I mean, what is lasting? I think heritage itself has an idea in it that there is a kind of a string to follow, a narrative. It's something from the past. It's something that we recognize that has lasted. And these kind of digital things, it's very hard to archive. It's very hard to kind of hold on to. I mean, there are concepts that you can pull along, but it's just very different than the conversation of the physical heritage that has been the focus so far this weekend. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Somebody else?
I'd say that this kind of future and that the video presents us is actually something that I see as a near-term future, and the problems associated with it and the issues associated with it are actually near-term issues. Actually, as you know, and that's probably the reason why I'm here, to say that I'm pretty skeptical about the future looking the way it is supposed to look like this, that we are actually heading to some quite less complex forms of society, actually, with actually less digital, yes, and quite more analog stuff that actually was the mode of living and mode of construction, mode of architecture, mode of daily living in times when what we have today is heritage, when that was built. Actually, we will, in the next several decades, I'd say, in some aspects, we'll have to come to terms with ways to build and to use and to have economies that are, at least at some points, more analog, more direct, more simplistic, more the way they have been before, when we had less energy at our disposal. Energy is the key thing here. What we see here is just representation upon representation upon representation, but actually we don't see the key processes of the economy of the world, of the construction world, and very soon we'll find out that we don't have the energy to run complex systems that end up like this. We'll soon have to return to heritage in the most general sense, and to recreate it from that point on.
So you believe this won't be an issue at all?
Sorry?
This won't be an issue at all, this kind of future?
I really don't know. I'm not a prophet, but I feel that, and I think that we will have some kind of diverging tendencies. At some point, we are still going to pursue this kind of thinking because that's the way we do see things. We are used to see things. But on the other hand, underlying principles, underlying realities of energy, of available energy for such level of complexity, because this is the highly complex result of a highly complex society, underlying complexities of energy will make us to realize that some things will have to revert to some previous state. And in that sense, we'll have probably less energy to actually deplore, to conserve heritage, and at the same time to realize that we have to live in a specific way, less complex, that's quite like the way that our previous heritage was built like.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that's a pessimistic view?
Well, if I thought it's pessimistic, I wouldn't adhere to it. I think it's rather pretty much realistic. I really don't know what's the time frame for that. It might be 2 decades, it might be 5. It might actually happen that we manage to find a way to get out of that process, to find some other ways to keep up the level of complexity, but actually, in the most general sense, I'm not sure that the trajectory that this video presents us with will keep up.
Okay, somebody else?
I'll have to. Thank you. I'll have to disagree. I think even when we say we, like we or we as people, it's not relevant anymore because there are new generations coming up that are the ones who are going to create the future. I mean, I kind of try to not keep up with this, but at least observe closely, because I have kids growing up now, and the way they grow up, the way they use technology, I mean, it's part of their bodies. The technology for them is not technology. It's just shoes, or just, they cannot live without it. And I think they're already in this place. Really, I mean, this is how they observe the world, which is scary for me. It's really frightening. And if we talk about the everyday life, it's frightening. If we talk about the work, it's frightening. If we talk about the culture, the way the society, the politics work, especially, I mean, recently I've seen this video, I mean, maybe you all seen it, where Barack Obama is addressing the nation, calling on a new world war, where it's, of course, not him, but it's simulated, but it's really real. So I think we're already in this place where we're really part of this new kind of virtual system. And so if we talk about the city or the heritage within the city, I don't think much is going to change, because I don't think it's that relevant anymore. I mean, this is kind of, I mean, I haven't been really thinking about it. It's just how if I try to see things now in relation to this is how I see it, because we have been recently working on a project where we kind of tried to reinvent the living unit for the city where I come from. So we observed the history of living in the city, the future of living, and how people live today, how not only millennials, but this new generation Z, how it's called, how they live, how they work. As it turns out, they don't need anything more than their bed, because that's where they live, that's where they work, that's where they eat, that's where they pretty much do everything.
And their phone.
Yes, and yeah, this is exactly eventually the laptop, but the phone, the computer, everything is within 2 square meters. So when I think about the cities, I don't think a major change is going to happen. I think it's even more funny, you know, all these apocalyptic kind of images that we always had about cities. I think this is rather funny today, because nothing like this would really happen. I think we'll keep it more simple in terms of space, yes, but this virtual future is very much kind of possible.
Okay, thank you.
For me, this is not a problem with the technologies. I saw the video and I saw my life. I have to fight with a lot of administration or people, and perhaps they have technologies or not, but in their mind, the reasons are the same. So for me, it's not a problem with new technologies. And in that case, the heritage is always there, and we have to mix with the heritage, and to mix with the heritage with technologies or without technologies. I'm agree with you. Perhaps we need more simplicity, but the simplicity is in technologies or not. We can't choose.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, what I think is, first of all, this is an architecture discussion, and we're talking about something like this, which means...
Sorry, this is the work of an architecture student, actually.
I know. But, you know, see what's happening. We're not really talking about physical reality. We're starting to talk about systems and maybe how stuff needs to be coordinated and what's happening on a larger scale. So maybe this whole thing is changing the way we think more than the real shaping of heritage. It's more about the thinking process and a whole different level, and not only architecture, on every level. And in that sense, I don't think it's really going to change the heritage, the physical heritage that much, but the way we think about it. And that might be an opportunity to change it later. So it's neither positive or negative. That's what you said. It could be technology or not. Maybe it doesn't matter. We have to deal with it anyways. But it would be interesting to see how we're going to shape it, what we're going to do with it.
Don't you think if we change the way we are thinking, that everything else is going to change? Also our perspective or perception of heritage?
Maybe. Well, maybe it's not going to change. It's just a perception. Maybe it stays the same. But
okay. Thank you.
I think that nowadays we live in a kind of era that we are really like afraid to do something very like strong with heritage. I think we can agree with that. Like for example, the slides you showed us from the Stefanplatz, right? There are like some kind of options what you can do with this kind of symbolic buildings. If we compare it with history, for example, we don't see such afraidness with buildings in general, right? For example, in our city of Košice, we have this kind of symbol as well. It is a church which was built as a Gothic, but we see another layers of like Baroque and another like new layers which kind of work together. So we see that this kind of approach of like protecting the heritage, it's very new, and I think it won't change as a physical shape. So I think the video is opening much wider question about the architecture in general, as if we see architecture as a mirror of society, right? And it's exactly the question is not about the heritage, I think, that much, because we know that we are kind of afraid. But as an architecture in general, we already know that maybe in 20, 30, or 40 years, there won't be some jobs that we know as today. I think it can like change architecture, for example, some kind of typologies, let's say.
Thank you. No? You want to say? You want to add something? No? Some questions from audience?
And also I want to add one thing, which is like kind of, I think we share it with Bosnia and Slovakia, because we share this socialist era, and we also we have lots of buildings that are built, and they are kind of symbolic. And I think that they're the main theme of them, or like the atmosphere which is there, we still we need this kind of time to rethink about the buildings. Like we can all agree about old churches. We all agree that okay, this is heritage, but we still, I think, we don't know what to do with this kind of communist era buildings. And I think we need still maybe some time, maybe not. But that's something I see that we share countries from Eastern Bloc, let's say.
Okay, thank you.
No, I just want to say, as we mentioned many times today, layers, 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 and I think the technology is only one layer more in perception of heritage. I also agree that if we have technology and something that it's short-lasting, it cannot be converted into heritage, because that something become heritage, we need time, and that also maybe explain that position of socialist buildings, because maybe we just need more time to crystallize are they heritage or not for us. But what I wanted also to say is that we can use technology to archive the heritage, because I think there is the project that it's carried out by USA, and that it's about using 3D scanner to archive the heritage which is under the danger, in the zone of conflict and wars, and that's how they're trying to at least have all details about certain heritage site, so they then can reconstruct it, if they wanted, in material or immaterial way. So I don't see that there is such a big problem with technology if we use it in a way we can benefit from it, but I agree with Sonia that I don't think that heritage in the future city will be based on this kind of things which are instant.
Okay, I will just make a comment. I mean, we already talked about this topic, Dubravko, once or twice. And for me, it is quite interesting to think about heritage in this way, because this video actually brings some topics we are actually not aware of. For example, it brings the topic of, I mean, I understood it as the video which puts the highlight on the new heritage and heritage we are actually making currently. I mean, heritage is something which is not just in the past, but has to become actually. I mean, for example, 2 minutes before is already heritage, it's already the past. For example, this video is actually maybe ask the question about the heritage we are actually making right now. I mean, this is extreme, of course, example, but I'm not sure that are we heading towards it or not. I mean, no one here can certainly say if it would happen like this. But let's say that it actually highlights the topic of the heritage we are actually making. Is it working? Okay, working right now, and the heritage which will be in the future, let's say. Yes, but also those technologies can serve to us in the way Isidora actually talked, if we use it in the right way. I mean, yeah, like the simulation of the previous heritage. Why not? Anyone more?
I'd say it in a quite different way. I'd say actually that the video demonstrates for us what the real purpose of the built heritage actually is. It is exactly its materiality. With the video we are presented the heritageless world, the heritageless way of being, and at the 2 moments when the system shuts down, we are for the few seconds presented with material reality. And the way the video perfectly shows us that despite it being somehow empty and somehow irritating, like the baby crying somewhere in the supermarket, it actually shows us there is some kind of, I'd say, healing element in this simple, pure materiality that shows after we remove the blubber that's constantly around it. So as for the video itself, I think that perfectly reminds us about the values of the, why do we actually adhere to heritage? Why do we value it? We value it because of its materiality that we feel like continues through time, and not just materiality, but the work in material, especially if we are talking about pre-industrial heritage. Like,
this video, everything is individual, so you cannot have heritage on individual experience of something. You need to have collective experience and collective memory to not related to something that will become heritage. So I think that is maybe the kind of answer on the video. And I also, well, yes, maybe I'm not going to extend that idea, but it's just that I think that it's important when we speak about heritage, because not all heritage is material. For example, there are many studies explaining that when the bridge in Mostar was like deconstructed, that people still feel the presence of the bridge, and the bridge was in their stories and like in the everyday life, like let's meet where the bridge was or something like that. So it's not only materiality, but that collective experience, and it's something that we miss in this like subjective virtual experience of space. So that's maybe the answer. So heritage needs to be collective.
I'd say it needs to be collective. That's absolutely right what you said. But I'd say it needs to be collective in the analog space and time to work. We cannot pretend to have this kind of collectivity within digital realm.
But what do you say about old stories? Is that a part of heritage? Stories that are just told over generations, over hundreds of years. They're never written down, just told. So that's heritage. It's not analog. Is it?
There's no physicality.
Yeah. That's
it is fully analog stuff.
But not materialistic.
No, it's not material.
So just the way this could be.
This thing is utterly and purely individualistic. That acts. It actually functions. All things digital, if you ask me, function only as a sum of individual parts. It is actually never a collectivity. It rarely is, to be precise. Not never, but rarely is. So the video demonstrates it perfectly. As Isidora said, it's for heritage, for you to have it, you need a collective experience of it.
But a collective experience, I think digital experiences can happen collectively as a group. But if your argument is right, and say it is, that it has to be individual, many people can have the same experience and share the same feeling, which creates a collective memory. So it doesn't have to be shared at the same time and place for it to become a collective memory.
It's the same outside of virtual reality. I mean, it's the same here. I mean, collective memory is even now generated individually, even without this virtual space, I think. But also in this virtual space, I think individuality is very, very much part of collectiveness. Because if we talk about even banal stuff such as social networks, which is really much this as well, but within a different kind of interpretation, it's very collective. Because everything any individual does, it does within this collective society. I mean, it's kind of, is it society or whatever, but within this collective. And anything that is individual within this collective, it seeks an approval or whatever, rejection or whatever. But it's really done in order to provoke a reaction within the collective.
And I actually think it's a bit short-sighted also to think this is it, right? I mean, 20 years ago, we couldn't imagine we were walking around with phones and connecting to everyone and seeing their faces and looking at them and talking to them.
Seeing where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And I think who knows what we'll be doing in 20 years? Who knows what kind of what the technology will provide at that point?
But we already know that, like the memory, like everything that happens on internet, it stays there. Like, I don't know, and even exactly the collectivity, like nowadays, it's much more stronger than in history because of the globalized world, right? I don't know, a few years ago, there was a song on YouTube that 1 billion of people have seen. It's already a collective memory, and it will be forever there on the internet.
I'd like it to disappear from my memory.
That's fair.
I hope you'll do it.
But I think that the digital space, if I can call it like in that way, has a very limited time of lasting. That it's very limited and it's very temporary. Most of its manifestations are temporary. They last for for a bit of time, and they expire. They disappear.
It is really temporary, but and actually, since it's too much of it, we need some things like built heritage to keep things that are not that much malleable. You know, we needed something that's firm, that's there the way it is, that's not really adjustable, like this collection of images and ideas and what else that exists in this digital world. So sometimes you just need things that are there the way they are. That's when we contrast it to the contemporary world of interconnectedness, digital interconnectedness. That's exactly, once again, the value of the built heritage because it is quite simply firmly there. It is continuous and it is hardly malleable the way our usual activities are. Our usual ideas about culture, actually. Our culture moved a lot towards this realm of instant communications, of editing stuff, of temporary stuff. So in contrast to that, what we have as built heritage can serve as a reference, because we do need references, especially when moving really freely in some other realm.
I'm just going to add, I think, now if I think about what is the future heritage, I mean, yes, built heritage is always going to be there as a heritage. But honestly, now when I think about what could be the future heritage, for example, I think TDR design, I mean, this is the first thing that comes to mind, like the Designers Republic design, this is the future heritage. I think if Bitcoin fails as a paying system, I mean, then this is the future heritage. I mean, it's really high on this level on how it changed the society, or how it had the tendency to change the society or to influence the society, that this is the future heritage. I mean, the next generations are going to look at, this is their system of values. It's always going to be built heritage, yes. It's always going to be literature, I'm sure. It's always going to be film as well. But these are the new medias that will, I mean, I think at some point no one ever thought that the film would be a heritage. No one ever thought that the design would be a heritage. But now, if we think about what's the future heritage, I really think it's within, really much within the digital system.
Somebody else wants to add something? Okay, then that's it. Thank you very much. Hvala.